The description can never be the described. Sailor Bob Adamson, what's wrong with right now, unless you think about it? We live in a time when our attention seems to be perpetually engaged. Our attention is constantly being sought and captured while simultaneously there is a relentless undercurrent of thoughts. This constant stream of images, worries, fears, predictions, conjecture, planning, longing, disgust, tensions, all boil down to one thing: thought. To be constantly hypnotized by thought is very stressful. The attention economy is always offering us a way out of that stressful realm of thought. Forget your worries. Leave the realm of thought. Watch some Netflix, watch a TikTok, a cat video, post on Instagram, watch a lecture, a documentary. Anything to be relieved of this constant thinking. So we tend to bounce between constant thinking and escaping into captured attention. What is the alternative? Is there something prior to thought, prior to attention? What would it be like to be thoughtlessly present? Can I be absolutely present without thought? Is it even possible to live a life without thought? And if so, what benefit, if any, is there to being thoughtlessly present? It is fairly easy to see that it is our thoughts in the form of past reflections and future anticipations that create a seeming barrier to experiencing life as it is presently. We are, for most of our lives, living lost in thought. Very, very rarely are we simply present. Instead, we are either lost in the nostalgia of what was, or the anticipation of what could be. Many philosophical and religious traditions have recognized this challenge and offered practices aimed at quieting the mind and making us more present. From mindfulness meditation in Buddhism to the practice of contemplative prayer in Christianity, these traditions have suggested tools to overcome the incessant chatter of our thoughts and foster a deeper connection with the present. It has also been suggested by other teachers and sages, from Adi Shankara to Nisargadatta Maharaj, that a radical inquiry into the nature of thought and its source can often prove sufficient enough to irreversibly reveal the unreality of the realm of thought, while simultaneously revealing the actual reality that thinking seemingly hides. We will look at the methods for overcoming thinking in traditional spiritual practice. Then, we will examine the nature of thought and how inquiry may help us to understand it, and thus pierce its illusory nature. Finally, we will ask the questions: what is here before thought? Who am I before or without thought? But first, we might ask ourselves, why would we want to stop thinking? We might begin with the simple insight that in this moment without thought, we are without concern or worry. There is a noticeable peace to being present without thought. We might also notice that there is an existing reality prior to thought, a reality that is ignored or not even noticed when we are preoccupied with thinking. We may even come to the conclusion that we spend very little of our life in this thoughtless realm and the vast majority of the time in the realm of thought. We live in thought, and thus we disregard what is. We disregard this, that which is before thought. To be free of thought, not necessarily thoughtless, is to be awake to what is prior to thought. To be awake to what is prior to thought is to awaken to reality. To awaken to reality is to be free. The problem of mind has been central to many of the approaches found in spiritual traditions and practices. The problem of mind, simply stated, is this: thought is recognized as seemingly separating us from a deeper, freer reality. Me-centered thought is painful. The thinker is recognized to be only a thought. Advaita Vedanta and Buddhism have long recognized this problem of the mind, and so have developed methods and practices to overcome, to even extinguish, the thinking mind and the thinking self. Buddhism presents a thoughtful and structured pathway designed to quiet the incessant chatter of the restless mind. At the heart of these practices is mindfulness, a discipline that involves being wholly present and actively engaged in the current moment. This requires a conscious effort to immerse oneself completely in whatever activity is at hand, whether it's a simple daily task or a complex emotional experience, doing so without succumbing to judgment or allowing distractions to take hold. Mindfulness in Buddhism is more than just a practice. It is a way of living. It encourages one to recognize the position of the observer as being always already prior to any perception, feeling, or thought. I am not what is perceived. I am the observer of perceptions. I am not the feeler. I am the observer of feelings. I am not the thinker of thoughts. I am the observer of thought. Thought is not stopped. Rather, thought is observed. From this understanding and point of view, I am is the untouched observer. Zen Buddhism suggests practices of inquiry in the form of koans. These paradoxical questions are meant to frustrate the thinking mind to such a degree as to bring it to a stop. As well as koans, Zen also has practices of self-inquiry. These questions of self-inquiry help one to radically examine the nature of self, or the sense of separate self. Particularly, the false sense of separate self that identifies as the thinker of thoughts. Ultimately, this radical inquiry reveals the so-called thinker of thoughts as just another thought, and nothing more. The ego self, as thinker of thoughts, is utterly unreal, illusory, and non-existent. There are only thoughts without a thinker. The ego self, or the sense of existing as a separate being, is utterly and completely illusory. The world of appearance, the universe, however, is both real and unreal. There is only this. And we don't know what this is. We don't know what it is not because we are ignorant, but because there is no one existing to know anything. We suddenly find ourselves as we have always been. This. However, this never ever becomes something, because there is ultimately no one to know it as something. Without a knower, without an observer, without a receiver of experience, all appearance, all apparent objects, all sensation are both real and unreal, both something and nothing, real enough to apparently appear, unreal because without a knower, observer, or receiver of that appearance, experience, sensation, these can never become fully existing objects to a subject. Without a knower, observer, or receiver, everything is only ever a momentary, temporary, and completely illusory modification of consciousness or no-thingness. This is all there is. This is both real and unreal, both something and nothing, and completely and utterly unknowable. Unknowable because there is no one present to know it. Zazen, or Zen meditation, begins this journey into understanding by focusing on just sitting and observing the thoughts that pass through the mind without attachment. Again, this is a practice to encourage one to first recognize and the rest in the observer or witness position in relation to thoughts. Only later does one inquire into the reality of the observer, consciousness, awareness, or sense of I am or existing. As we have seen with Zen Buddhism, often the path of spiritual inquiry begins by recognizing the witness or observer position in relation to all appearance. We rest safely in the untouchedness of the witness or observer position. We allow the world to remain as it is. We cultivate a sense of detachment. We may even begin to live very simply in the realms of money, food, and sex. However, we must go further. To a great degree, we have rescued our attention from the world. We have freed a great deal of energy and attention. We now must use that freed energy and attention to inquire into the witness position. We must penetrate the illusion of the witness position. Ultimately, we recognize that there is no receiver of experience of any kind, not even as a passive observer. There is only this. There is no receiver of this. Advaita Vedanta's primary concept is the non-dualistic notion that the individual self, Atman, and the universal self, Brahman, are one. This realization disrupts the conventional duality between self and other. This re-identification of Atman with Brahman can often lead to the dissolution of the illusory separation between observer, observed, and the act of observing. With the dissolving of the witness or observer position, comes the simultaneous evaporation of the thinker or thinking self. Thoughts may still happen, but they happen without a thinker. This radical insight manifests itself as a lived experience. The incessant chatter of the mind is no longer identified with an illusory thinking subject. It is clearly seen that there is no thinker nor receiver of thoughts. Thus, thought radically quietens. In that silence, there is only the unknowable this. This, real as appearance. This, unreal as it lacks a receiver of any kind. Something and nothing. Advaita recognizes the initial importance of having developed the capacity to rest in the observer or witness position, free in relation to thought, and thus free in relation to the world. Further inquiry in Advaita continues in the inquiry, who am I? The observer or witness position itself is inquired into. Who, what, or where is the observer? The thinker of thoughts and the observer of thoughts are both found ultimately to be non-existent. There is no thinker of thoughts. The thinker of thoughts is itself a thought. But also, there is no observer of thoughts. There is no hearer of sound. There is only sound. There is no feeler of feelings. There are only feelings. Thought is transcended because first the subject, the thinker of thoughts, is shown to be illusory, freeing thought from meaning for a me. Then the very observer of thought is revealed as illusory. There is no position outside of thought. There is only thought, no thinker and no observer. Thought is. Thought becomes simple and ordinary. Thought no longer hurts. Thought merely is. Thought is in relation with no one. Thought is liberated. Good thoughts versus bad thoughts. What exactly does it mean to have no thoughts? Does it signify a state of complete mental emptiness, or are certain thoughts acceptable while others are not? As we have mentioned, the mind seems to be constantly occupied with an unending stream of thoughts, most of which are self-centered and emotionally charged. These thoughts generate anxiety and discomfort. Problematic thoughts are those that are self-referential, emotionally charged, and have a sticky quality, often pulling other related thoughts and memories into their orbit. This interconnectedness frequently leads to spiraling thought patterns, exacerbating problems and emotions. Someone cuts you off in traffic and spirals into a road rage incident. Someone gives you a flirtatious glance. Suddenly, you are being unfaithful to your partner. Thoughts lead to more thoughts, especially self-referring thoughts. However, not all thoughts are problematic. Some thoughts, such as those related to planning and problem-solving, play a pivotal role in your cognitive processes. For individuals engaged in knowledge work or complex problem-solving, the ability to retain and enhance these cognitive functions is of utmost importance. To shed light on the differentiation between problematic and beneficial thoughts, you can turn to cognitive neuroscience. Neuroscience has recently uncovered the existence of two distinct brain networks, the default mode network, DMN, and the task positive network, TPN. The DMN is associated with mind-wandering, self-referential thoughts and emotional processing, making it a hub for problematic thoughts. In contrast, the TPN comes into play when you engage in tasks that require focused attention, problem-solving, or mindfulness. During meditation, the DMN can be temporarily suppressed, allowing the TPN to dominate, resulting in enhanced cognitive functioning. However, the challenge lies in maintaining this balance over the long term. While mindfulness meditation can temporarily suppress the DMN, it reverts to its default state once meditation ceases. Neuroscientific research has shown that during the resolution of complex problems, specific brain regions experience changes in activity patterns. What is remarkable about problem solving is that it often occurs unconsciously. Studies have demonstrated that your brain can work on a problem offline, independently of conscious awareness. This phenomenon challenges the conventional notion that conscious thought is the sole driver of problem solving, revealing the intricate interplay between conscious and unconscious cognitive processes. To illustrate this intricate relationship between conscious and unconscious thought, you can employ the metaphor of the elephant and the rider. In this metaphor, the elephant symbolizes the vast, offline, and high-speed cognitive processor within your brain. The rider, on the other hand, represents your conscious, working mind, the arena where thoughts are framed and processed. The rider initiates a problem-solving task by sending it down to the elephant, which then engages in complex cognitive processing. Once the problem is solved, the elephant returns the answer to the rider, who becomes consciously aware of it. This interplay between conscious and unconscious thought processes underscores the complexity of your cognitive functioning. By suppressing the DMN, or the self-referential, or ego self, part of the brain, we automatically make vast computing power available in unconscious recesses of the brain. If we shift our understanding from a neurological point of view to a theological point of view, we might suddenly understand why in many spiritual traditions, East and West, that it is strongly suggested to relax the discursive mind and to let go and let God. Neurologically, it is clear what we are doing when we surrender. We are relaxing the DMN, default mode network, or self-referential and discursive thought, to a greater, unknown, unconscious part of the brain that can solve the problem offline and present the answer to us later. Description can never be the described. What this means is that anything we say or think about anything can never be the actual thing we are thinking about, talking about, or describing. For example, we often describe the act of seeing with this description, I am seeing. This description is not the same as actual seeing. Seeing does not have an I who sees. There is actuality only in the direct experience of seeing, just seeing. Both the seer and the seen are illusory. Of course, the word seeing is itself only a pointer. We must always be careful not to merely read the menu, but rather taste the food, that is to say, taste the actual. Because the description can never be the described, nothing we perceive can be truly known. We see that the world is unknowable, first, because it is seen that no description in thought or word is the same as anything in the world. This initial understanding allows us to relax our knowing. In other words, to rest in the untouchable witness position of pure not knowing. One is still capable of description, but description now deeply recognized as fiction, as merely a story. Description that will never again be confused with the appearance of object, thought, feeling, or perception. In other words, with the appearance of the seemingly actual. Once we penetrate even the observer or witness position, we realize we don't know what this is because there was never ever a receiver of this. There is only this. There never ever has been a knower of this. So this cannot be known. It can only be lived by no one. It is the unknowable this. It is limitless and unbounded freedom.